Can you imagine that in the middle of Formula One the team simply does not know where your car is? Well, that happened to Ferrari with Hamilton and Silverstone. What did they hide? Why is Vasseur so furious? And, above all, how does this affect the future of the British pilot in the Scuderia? Silverstone's career was emerging as a promising stage for Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton in particular. It was his first prize at home wearing the colors of Maranello, an event loaded with expectations, emotion and media pressure. However, what seemed to be a day to consolidate the progress of the SF25 ended up becoming a minefield of technical questions after a completely unexpected confession. Fred Vasseur, team director, publicly admitted that during half a race they lost the GPS geolocation system of the Hamilton car. This loss is not simply a minor technical error. It is an extremely serious anomaly in the operational structure of a modern Formula One team. F1 GPS technology not only allows you to know the exact location of the car on the layout. It goes much further. It is the central tool that feeds in real time all the strategy calculations, distance with rivals, consumption of tires, thermal management, response time in pit stops and activation of equipment orders. Without that active telemetry, Ferrari's wall literally was blind with respect to one of his cars. For more than 20 laps, they did not know if Hamilton was gaining time in certain sectors, if it was being reached by rivals, if their tires entered the graining zone, or if the real pace was aligned with the career objective. The team had to improvise each decision, based on visual assumptions or the radio reports that the pilot himself could transmit, which is insufficient in the face of the millimeter accuracy required by Formula One. But the GPS failure uncovered that there are still fundamental cracks in the technical infrastructure of the equipment. And what is most surprising is that this did not happen in a remote circuit or in extreme climatic conditions. But this situation also opens the door to a series of questions that no one has answered clearly. What was the real cause of signal loss? Was it an external interference? Was there an internal software failure? Or was it the responsibility of a bad hardware integration after the installation of the new aerodynamic soil that Ferrari introduced in Austria? Until now, Ferrari has not issued a formal technical statement explaining the details, which further feeds the perception of lack of control within the team. And while Hamilton himself publicly minimized the situation to avoid stirring the environment, paddock sources indicate that his confidence in the technical team suffered a considerable blow. At closed doors, the situation was treated with extreme seriousness, because it was not only an isolated technical failure. It was a symptom of systemic vulnerability that could be repeated if it is not corrected at the root. Silverstone, far from consolidating a redemption narrative for Ferrari, ended up revealing that the team still has much to be resolved. An invisible but devastating failure that could cost a victory. And worse, one that could cost Ferrari the credit of his star signing if these situations continue. Because in Formula One, losing your pilot's trust is equal or more dangerous than losing control of your car. The truly alarming of what happened in Silverstone was not the loss of GPS itself, but the hidden consequences that it left in its path, many of which went unnoticed by the casual spectator, but that in the internal environment of Ferrari resonated as an alarm that has not yet been silenced. At first glance, the fourth place of Lewis Hamilton could be interpreted as progress, as a sign that the SF25 finally begins to respond to the development efforts implemented from Austria. But this result hides a series of technical and strategic impacts that can only be evaluated when each micro-decision breakdown that Ferrari was forced to improvise during the race. Without active GPS, Ferrari could not do something as basic as precisely calculating the performance delta with respect to its rivals. They could not establish real-time references to measure tire wear depending on the rhythm, or reliably evaluate if Hamilton was within the optimal range to execute an undercut or protect from an overcut. These types of decisions, which are usually taken with strategic simulation software support, were on this occasion left to human judgment under pressure, which exponentially increases the risk of error. In addition, without precise geolocation data, radio instructions between Hamilton and their track engineer were less efficient. Communication, although constant, was much more imprecise. In several moments, the team could not confirm whether Hamilton was in a safe position to perform a pit stop without traffic, which led to doubt at crucial moments. This lack of strategic reactivity probably cost Hamilton at least one track position. In the great scheme of the championship, this episode could also alter the future development of SF25. Ferrari could be forced to review all the integration of its electronic system, possibly introducing temporary patches that delay other planned improvements. This would generate a bottleneck in aerodynamic or chassis development, because in F1, everything is connected. And each technical resource that is intended to solve an unprepared problem is a resource that is not used to evolve the car in front of rivals such as McLaren or Red Bull. The conclusion is clear. What seemed like a punctual technical failure had a domino effect throughout the Ferrari operation. And although the team managed to hide the coup in the results of Sunday, the truth is that the loss of GPS exposed deep fragilities that, if they are not addressed quickly in decision, could become a constant throughout the year. In a season where the margin for error is narrower than ever, Ferrari cannot afford to continue losing races before they begin. Silverstone was a decisive moment. The message was not that the car failed. The message was that the team could not protect its pilot from an avoidable situation. And that, for someone like Hamilton who bases his performance on certainty and the absolute connection with his box, can be devastating. Because it is not just a failure, it is what this failure symbolizes. A team that has not yet reached the level of operational sophistication that a pilot of his caliber requires. Internally, sources close to the team have suggested that post-carrier meetings were not simple. Vasseur, although publicly assumed responsibility, also suggested that there are elements in the technical chain that are not functioning as they should. And that suggests an environment where tensions could climb if immediate measures are not taken. From Hamilton's perspective, this incident also arouses memories. Memories of the first seasons in Mercedes, when the team still made critical mistakes that cost him podiums. The difference is that at that time, there was a long-term plan, a promise of collective construction that ended in multiple titles. Is there that same commitment in Ferrari? Is the team arranged to redesign his entire operation around him as Mercedes did? Or is this just another chapter of great expectations that are not met? But beyond speculation, what is clear is that Silverstone was a test. Not only for the performance of the car, but the confidence link between pilot and equipment. And now Ferrari has to answer. He has to demonstrate that Hamilton was not only a media signing, but a true commitment to excellence. Because if he does not, he could lose more than a championship. I could lose the faith of one of the best pilots in history. In the teams in turn, these types of errors are not allowed to pass. The technical responsibility chain within the Scuderia is rigid, and internal audits have already begun to determine if the failure was a product of negligence, of a bug in the control software of the ECU, or of a bad reading of the behavior of the sensors after the implementation of the new soil. The worrying thing is that this type of investigations take time. Time that Ferrari does not have. Meanwhile, the immediate future becomes uncertain. What will happen later? The team has only a few weeks before the following key European racing series. Not only should the root technical problem be solved by ensuring that the GPS connection works without error margin, but also must rebuild its internal confidence and its decisions under pressure. But beyond internal measures, there is a question that floats in the air. How would other teams react to a similar situation? Would this have happened in McLaren, where the technical environment is fully automated and each module goes through double redundancy before being approved? Or in Mercedes, where electronic risk management is simulated in servants' mirror weeks before each implementation? The answer is not reassuring for Ferrari. Because what this ruling demonstrated was not simply a punctual technical weakness. It was a difference in operational culture. While some teams already operate as technological institutions with Swiss precision, Ferrari continues to fight to leave old vices of improvisation and compartmentalization behind. Modern F1 does not forgive fragmentation. It requires total integration. And while that does not happen, no matter how many world champions hire, the errors will continue to appear. In key moments, like Silverstone, Ferrari is now at a crossroads. It has the car. It has the pilot. It has the pressure. But the system is missing. The true 2025 challenge will not only fight for victories. It will be to build an environment where errors do not have space to be born. And that, paradoxically, could be more difficult than beating McLaren or Red Bull on track. Silverstone left something much more important than a classification in the final result. He exposed that in Formula 1, the greatest enemy of a team is not always in the garage next door. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is inside. Not in the form of rivalry, but in the form of technical complacency, of processes that are not completely polished. The GPS error is not an isolated event. It is the symptom of a system that has not yet closed the gaps between ambition and execution. It is a attention call that, if ignored, could have a much higher cost than losing a podium. It could fracture the relationship with one of the greatest assets Ferrari has had in the last decade. A victory-hunger pilot with a legacy and with a winning mentality that does not tolerate mediocrity. Now the true background begins. Not the one that runs in the circuits, but the one that is fought between departments, between engineers, between design decisions, between software and hardware strategies. It is the race that will determine if Ferrari is ready, not only to fight a season, but to build a new era. An era in which the failures like Silverstone are an anecdote, not a constant. Because there is something that paddock is very clear. If Hamilton is given a competitive car and an infallible environment, he will win again. The question is whether Ferrari may live up to that equation before it is too late.